Zoom. We're live in the French conference room, and Jean is just watching it via YouTube. That was old.
That was wrong.
That was out of date.
Totally wrong.
So I sent out a correction saying that we really were going to be live. So, since it's time, folks, if you want to hit your mic button to make this live. Great. Welcome to the Camden Charter Commission meeting of September the 16th. And I hope, I don't know, I'll turn all the way so when Bill wants to interject, it can be heard. First item on our agenda is to approve the minutes from August the 13th. Are there any questions, comments, or corrections?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
I wasn't there.
The minutes are approved. Thank you, Jean White. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is take a look at Article 8, which is nominations and elections, and Article 9, general provisions. You all have the drafts of those that were sent out actually prior to the previous meeting. We couldn't get to them because we spent so much time on growth management. So let's take a look first on Article 8. The only change in Section 2 really is the change in the number of signatures required on the nomination petition. Katrina's request was not more than 50. I think, Bill, you had suggested up to 100, and the minimum is 25 per state statute. So that's the only change in that section. We enhanced the order of candidate surnames by actually putting in exactly what came out of the main state statute. It's a little cumbersome seeming, giving you all the different ways that the last name and first name order, but that's what that section is about. And there was no change in Section 4. Yeah.
One of the things I was noticing when I was reviewing this stuff today is the numbering is strange because the articles are all in Roman numerals, okay? Then the sections are in Arabics, and then under the sections we've got small alphabet, small a, small b, small c, and then we go with Arabic numbers again, okay? We've got Arabic numbers in here twice. Yeah, I think it's confusing. And we've got no capital letters. Maybe it would just be a more efficient way to number the whole thing if we did articles in Roman numerals, sections in capital letters. So we'd have section capital A, capital B, capital C, et cetera. And then underneath that would be ones, Arabic numbers, 1, 2, and 3, and then beyond that would be small a, small b, small c. It's strange in official documents to see the same characters, whether they be Roman numerals, capitals, small case, Arabics, used in multiple locations in a document.
Well, that's sort of beyond my pay grade. I have to
Okay.
be honest with you. I thought we were sort of following what's currently there.
I think
but
we
that
are.
doesn't mean
And
that.
it's getting a little weedy, but it's sometimes when I'm looking for 1A, and all of a sudden am I looking for 1A or for A1? And it seems.
So you're saying the section should be alpha, so it would be section A,
Yeah, capital A.
and then the
Capital
next,
B.
the next lower down would be, and let's just look at section 2, nomination by petition method. That would be section A,
Right.
and the petitions would be 1.
Would be Arabic 1.
Arabic 1, and then the first paragraph would be an A.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's typical document, is Roman numerals, capital letter, Arabic numeral, lowercase letter.
And next
Yep.
lower Arabic, and then the next is alpha.
But the way it's now is the way it is through most all of the town documents. Wouldn't that cause to change? I know where you're going. I'm
Yeah,
not
I don't
saying.
know if we need to do this or not.
And then we'd have to rewrite the whole
When I
thing
was reading the
because-
thing, it just seemed awkward, unusual formation of.
But I think,
document.
but this should have been a discussion at the first day, because now a lot of this has already been reviewed and rewritten. So now you'd have to go back to square one and go and renumber the
Yeah,
whole thing.
It's not real important, but,
Good point,
In
though.
10 years, when you do it again,
Well,
Don't worry about it.
you and Bob will get it fixed in 10 years.
There you go.
Well,
the first thing.
Anyway, on
wait,
section 4, I have a real comment. Oh,
No,
go
on
ahead.
that point, why don't I check with Janice
Okay,
as far as whether she has a standard
Excuse me.
protocol for the numbering to make sure we're sort of in line with how the rest of the town is doing it.
Yeah.
The other thought is that should the town at some point go to a system like E-code 360, which is a service and an online interactive, like Bar Harbor uses it, I think Ogunquit uses it. They actually take your codes, your zoning ordinance, your charter and codes, and upload it to a standardized system, and then it could be changed then, if the town wants to spend that money. But let me check, I'll check with Janice.
yeah. Actually, it's not, certainly nowhere near the top of the list, but it just struck me as I was looking
Okay.
through more of this stuff, that the order is not typical for documents like this. A real comment in 4B is second line, shall be held within 10 days on one notice thereof in a newspaper. Can we put print or electronic? Because I think we're really trying to go to the fact that nobody reads print newspapers anymore, or very few people do. And just so nobody says, oh, you put it in the online version and I didn't see
In
it.
print or electronic media,
Yeah,
Can't we say "and" instead of "or"?
you could do yeah.
Because there
Maybe
are
it
some
may
older
involve-
people who don't use electronic media.
well, we could say in a newspaper or and,
I would do "and." I think it's.
Where are you looking at this point in time?
section 4B,
4B,
down towards the
second
bottom
line.
of the page.
4B, okay.
Second line. So in a newspaper and electronic media of general
I
circulation.
know a lot of the state statutes say that notices go in newspapers, print newspapers. And that's very archaic.
I'm obviously on the wrong article.
Well,
or
And
something,
also with
because-
us, most of our newspapers are owned by the same
Nominations.
people that do the
Nominations.
electronic media.
Section
So
4, determination of election results.
Right, this is talking
B,
about
plurality, the
Yeah.
second line.
election shall be determined by plurality. What does that have to do with publication?
Well, go to the second line.
Keep reading.
Yes, Jim.
No, I was just saying hello from the distance.
Oh, thank you. Hello,
Remember that
hello back.
song?
Anything else on that page?
Well, I think that just the point is, as long as it gets into a general circulation somehow, so people see it.
Yeah.
So, because it also references a website too, so I mean, they got to keep that in there too.
That might count as electronic media. Yes, Bill?
that would count as electronic media.
Hold on, guys, Bill Kelly.
Just hopefully everybody can hear me or you can relay this. Have we thought out how it's going to happen within 10 days and also get a notice in the newspaper? That can be almost impossible with certain publication dates, depending on the weekend.
So you're saying the or would be, could it be and or?
No, I think or is good because you,
Okay.
as Lowry said, there's many examples of how newspapers are still required to be the media of notification, and it makes sense to do that here. I'm thinking about the 10-day part. How are we going to have an election within 10 days? And I'm sorry to bring this up earlier in a prior draft, but how would we have an election within 10 days and already somewhere between the tie vote and the new election within 10 days also have a notice in the newspaper? That could be tight, is all I'm saying. Maybe you could go to 14 days. Does anybody object to that to make sure we get a notice?
What about Maine
Good idea.
state statute? Is there something in the Maine state statute that dictates this, Bill?
No. Not that I'm aware of for a local election, but I'd have to look it up.
This is for local elections,
Yes.
and I'm going to use an example of we elect a select person. okay, and we have a tie there, and we have to come back within 10 days, that's totally ridiculous. I mean, because you're gonna have to have time in there for a official legal recount, okay? And then if it has to be republished again, 10 days is, I would say 30 days would probably be the minimum.
Well, we want to try to not have you in a situation where we don't, depending on how many people are being elected, where we don't have enough people sworn into office. Although it is true that a holdover officer will continue until a new one is sworn in. So never mind that. Actually, there will be coverage because the prior elected officials will continue in office. So, so never mind. Thanks.
Yeah, but
Okay,
wouldn't it make, Bill, wouldn't it make sense to change that, like you suggested earlier, because somebody's going to push that 10 days, and sometimes it just won't work.
I think the 14, though, is a good extension.
I would say,
You know,
yeah.
refeeding the ballots through the machine will not take 10 days. You know, if we're refeeding through the ballots in these machines, we've done it at night at the end of an election. When the machine
Legal
broke down.
opinions need to be done, and then there's, you know, the whole discussion. I think you're right, 14, even 21 days, either one, I wouldn't have splitting the difference.
I would say
And the idea
21.
is that when the notice hits the newspaper, typically we would expect that people would have 7 days from the date of the notice in the newspaper until the election. So that's enough time to make plans. That's pretty typical.
So you're still saying 14?
I think it might be tight, but I think it's doable. And I wouldn't want to delay it too much, frankly. I think there are two competing issues here of not having delay, but also getting hopefully about 7 days notice. But I would do it 14 and other folks can.
Yeah, I mean, worst case is the election's on a Tuesday and the newspapers go to print on Tuesday. So they would have to wait that full week to get the new notices in the paper, and then 14 days should still be okay.
Correct. Yep.
I imagine that news of a tie or runoff would travel quickly.
But they're not going to print a special print edition of the paper
Right.
to do that.
We'd like a vote on this?
Well, if you.
Motion that we make it 14 days.
And that we add,
Yeah.
and we add the verbiage or electronic
I'll
media.
second your motion, John.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome, John.
All those in favor? That's unanimous.
We've done that before.
Thank you.
7. Okey-doke. Section 5, I don't believe we made any changes to section 5, but are there any comments about what we have in A or B?
I've got something on B.
Sure.
Typically, at the polling place, we've had the full language of an amendment or a proposed ordinance somewhere on the wall, because the poll workers, if somebody comes in and says, I don't understand this, they can advise them, if you go over there and look at it, it's all written down. And I think that's a good idea to let that continue. So I think we should have language in here that says, you know, copies of the full text of any ordinance or amendment to be enacted by ballot shall be made available at the town office at least 30 days before election site and displayed at the voting site, or words like that. You know, it's what we do in practice.
It is.
Let's say that that's what we're going to continue to do that.
Sorry you got bounced out. Either you did it or something happened. You still there? Oops, wait, I got to put you back on speaker. You there?
I am, thank you.
Okay, no, thank you. Okay.
makes-
And displayed,
At the voting site.
what do we
Good
call it?
idea.
At the polls or at the election site?
The election site, okay.
On day of the election. Or displayed on the day of election at
At the polls.
the polling place. Or words to that effect. Is it okay if maybe Jean cleans that language up, if there's a better way of saying polling place or
Yeah.
site of election?
And that way, if one day it moves from the fire hall to somewhere else, we don't have to change the language. Because it'll still be, we'll have the polling place will be somewhere.
How about a motion to approve adding day of the election and place of polling?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous, 7-0. Thank you. And we did update section 6. If you notice, we did add some verbiage in there in case the method of voting machines change somehow. We've got use of mechanical, electronic, or other devices for voting or the counting of votes consistent with the law. So that's expanded language for give flexibility.
Makes perfect sense.
Do we have a motion on Article 8 with the recommended changes? Yes.
I'm curious, because I honestly don't know how this works. There's been a lot of discussion with the election coming up in November that a lot of people will use mail-in ballots, absentee ballots, because of the disease and all that kind of stuff. There are some states that don't even begin to count absentee ballots until the day after the election, which has created all kinds of furor in the newspaper. I think our practice is to start counting them a week or so before the election.
It depends, yes.
Would it be worthwhile to put language in here that says that we will have completed counting the absentee ballots by the completion of Election Day? Does
No.
that make any sense?
I think we should, because that's governed by the Secretary of State. I think we just will have to follow whatever the state guidelines are, and I don't think we want to put them in here in case they change. For instance, they have just changed. It used to be that we couldn't start processing those absentee ballots earlier than like Friday before the election or Saturday before the election, and it has just been changed that a municipality can start processing those absentee ballots or recording them in the machines a week before, the Tuesday before the election. So if we do something in here and it changes again,
Okay, that's fine.
we're out of date.
I wasn't sure how it was handled locally. I really didn't know.
Yeah, for what it's worth, Deb, you're absolutely right. We don't want more detail in here because we'll run afoul of the next change.
Yeah, it may change back, you know. So that was your other comment. Do we have a motion to
It's so
approve
dirty.
Article 8 with the recommended changes?
So moved.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? 7-0. Okey-doke. Article 9, general provisions. If you all remember, we expanded, look, there's some misnumbering here. We've got section 1, 2, no 3, and a section 4.
Hey,
So that's a boo-boo.
Didn't we eliminate something?
We
Maybe
did.
why the number's off.
Yeah, why we didn't change the numbers. But number 4, conflict of interest, is expanded. I can't.
I remember we
I
had
have to
the
lick my
discussion
finger with my
about
mask on, and guess what, guys? It doesn't work.
lick your finger so you can move the page. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, general provisions in A, we moved the creation of departments to the select board because it was a select board responsibility. Remember, one of the first things that we did at Roger Moody's suggestion was take some of the duties that end up getting sprinkled throughout the charter and consolidate them. So these were renumbered because creation of departments went to Article 2 in the old charter. Direction by town manager went into Article 3, which is about the town manager. Interdepartmental planning moved to the town manager article. So that's why that numbering is.
yeah.
I remember, I couldn't have told you exactly what it was, but I remember we removed an entire section
Yep.
of something. So
That was it.
it's been months since we went over this, so.
So that really is section 3, the conflict of interest, and we had a lot of input from Bill Kelly on this expansion of the conflict of interest.
I've got a couple comments on that.
Sure.
In Section 4, Sub A, it says, "Any official of the town who has a financial interest, direct or indirect, or by reason of ownership of stock in any corporation or business entity shall not, blah, 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 blah." I think we need to put language in there that excludes publicly held companies. Okay? Because language like this would prohibit anybody in the town, a decision maker in the town, from agreeing to a contract with FedEx or agreeing to a contract to buy office supplies from Amazon or agreeing to anything like that we do kind of routinely, and we're not, in our heart, we're really not worried about any kind of conflict. So let's put language in here that precludes publicly held companies from this consideration.
Bill, may I have your input? Bill?
I was on mute, sorry. I don't think it matters whether it's public or not, in the sense that it's qualified. It has to be a company that is in any contract with the town for the sale of land. I don't think anybody would get too excited if you had stock in W.B. Mason and they supplied paper, but I'm not sure that necessarily we could anticipate that there would never be a public corporation which would have a contract with the town in which there could be some sizable ownership. I don't know. I think we always have some discretion in these things, but I guess it really doesn't matter a whole lot either way, but I'd probably just leave it the way it is because that is sort of how the statute is written.
But it doesn't say contracts over X number of dollars. It just says contract, in contract with the town. Okay?
Yes, right.
And so the town has-
Keep in mind, this is a big picture kind of document, our charter. It's not intended to get into the weeds, and we cannot anticipate every possibility that will occur. But we always read it with a level of common sense. Anyway, so I understand the point, but I think it might be a little. It's not going to create a problem, I don't think. But we wouldn't want someone who was misbehaving because it was a publicly held corporation, then they were off the hook. And we have some entities in Camden and some owners of corporations in Camden who certainly are owning substantial parts of public corporations. It's not like we're in, the sticks in terms of we never see folks who have such interests. So it could happen.
I mean, like somebody could be an employee of Camden National Bank and have ownership of own Camden National Bank stock, because that's publicly traded.
Or Smith Corona or something else, yes.
Or CMP, or whoever we buy our fuel oil from.
Yeah.
There's a lot of publicly traded companies out there. And it concerns me when we start saying, well, it's small enough that it doesn't matter. If you steal $1 from somebody, does it not matter? But if you steal $100, it does matter. I thought that's why we had these kind of documents, was to make it clear so that we wouldn't have to worry about somebody coming back and filing a complaint against the town for making a decision where they might theoretically benefit.
I guess I'm not following you, Larry, because the language that's in there now would cover small and large.
Well, what I'm suggesting is that it could be, if you've got 5 select board members up there, and 4 of them own stock in FedEx, then they don't even have a quorum. They can't make a decision.
But is that the kind,
I wouldn't give that legal opinion.
Okay.
Because there are a lot of people that own stocks in municipal funds and not mutual funds that could be, they don't even know they own stocks in different companies.
Right.
And any retirement plan that is managed by someone could, in essence, have FedEx or, XYZ company in there that you don't even know about. So,
And then, folks, let's keep in mind, this is in case FedEx comes to town and wants to open a call center or something, and we have someone who is either employed or owns a substantial portion of it. That would be, entirely different. But we're not going to apply this paragraph to every commodity that we see on a daily basis. It just isn't going to happen. We need to have it in there to cover us, but we won't go to absurdities in applying it.
yeah, if Janice orders supplies from Staples and she happens to own $10 of, that's not what we're talking about. But I understand your concern, but I kind of agree with Bill's take on it.
But I don't recall a problem either over the years with this.
No.
And everybody that I've ever served on the board, that they had a conflict, usually says right up front that they have some kind of relationship with whatever, and they step down.
Yeah, this is like obscenity, when you see it.
Any other comments in this section?
On C, It says, any such official, officer, or employee with a conflict of interest shall recuse him or herself, blah, blah, blah. And then you go down to line 3, the third line in C, at the tail end, it says the official's abstention. It should be the official's recusal, because recusal and abstention are two different acts. So they should both be recusal. And then in the fourth line, that should also be recusal.
Yes, okay, yeah, the vote would be recuse themselves,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, because recusal is different from abstention.
Right. Although there are
Yeah,
people that
because
use it.
the recusal comes,
It's different.
I know it is. I know.
Abstention, you have to get up and leave. Recusal, you can sit there and say, I'm not participating.
No, recusal, you come down,
recusal, you come down.
yes.
I'm sorry, the other way
Abstaining.
around.
Right.
Okay, yeah, sorry, yeah. But they're not the same, so let's make them all the same word.
Okay, so the last sentence will read, "The official's recusal and reason for the recusal shall be recorded in the minutes of the meeting."
Yep.
Shall we?
Looking for a motion?
Yes,
A
Jim.
motion that we change the two words in the last sentence of section C to recusal from abstention.
Second that.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Next item, anybody?
And 5.
Okay, next would,
Okay.
Bill, do we need to expand at all section 5A, that list of how they can't be discriminated against? Or are we covered, well enough covered? Do we need to say sex and sexual orientation? Or is it covered?
You certainly could talk about orientation or identification. Those are definitely words and phrases we see now that fit into this category. So there's no harm in adding those two because of sexual orientation or sexual, or I think it's still called sexual identification. Maybe there's another term for it now, but orientation or identification could be added, sure.
Do we have a problem if we do not?
Well, what's the federal
Yeah, what
wording, Bill?
Bill?
Certainly the scope of this is expanded to both sexual orientation and sexual identification now by the Supreme Court. So, yes, those things are now absolutely in these categories of
So we put in both, right?
protected status.
Yes.
So we keep the single word sex, and then we add, comma, sexual orientation,
Or
or
identification.
Or
or
sexual,
identification, and then, or political or religious opinions and affiliations.
I think that works, so.
Okay?
Orientation or identification, right?
Yep. Okey-doke. I brought that up. Would somebody make a motion?
so move.
Second, yep.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you, 7-0. I know, Lowry, on B, I think when we first discussed this, you made I think it was you, that questioned about, particularly where it says, "No person shall willfully make any false statement, certificate," and then and the word mark, rating or report, and whether that was, what that really kind of referred to.
I remember saying that, but that would have been a good comment. I mean, mark sounds like something you would see in a document when people couldn't write, couldn't spell.
Well, it looks like-
The person makes their mark.
Make your X.
I think it's like in case somebody would alter something. Isn't that right, Bill? You think that's why that's in there? In case somebody would be altering?
I do.
Markup.
Can we just leave it as is rather than explaining anymore? I mean, is that getting too weedy?
Tweety.
If you're asking me, I think it's fine.
Okay.
We want to have tools. We don't
Got it.
want to limit the tools, but
Okay,
we don't want to get too weedy, but I think it's fine.
all right. As we go down, is there anything else?
On D, the language seems weird. Should it say no person who holds a compensated appointed town position rather than appointive?
Pointed.
Appointed,
Appointed.
ED.
It sounds better.
Yeah,
I mean, it
appointive,
sounds more,
That's a strange word.
I call that an edit, not a substantial change. I don't think we need a
It's like
motion on
correcting
that.
spelling.
Anything else in that
So
section?
D, if I'm reading it right, is saying that someone that's employee of the town or appointed cannot solicit, say, main free election funding. That would be the $5 you need. That would be what, same thing?
Well, it wouldn't just necessarily be an employee,
Well,
it's
just-
select,
right.
well, a
But
compensated
it
appointed.
prevent from going amongst the
Yes.
town. Okay, that's fine.
Compensated appointed is an employee because select people were elected, not appointed.
It would,
Compensated, they were compensated,
We were compensated, but we weren't appointed.
we were elected.
We were elected.
Elected, compensated.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good.
okay. If we're good on that one, section 6 is actually a new addition. There really wasn't a place where we talked about that there are sort of standards for how a board or committee gets organized. So we added this section in order to do that and say, you know, you've got to elect officers, you've got to adopt Robert Rules of Order, and you've got to schedule your meetings. Meetings are open to the public. And we added the forfeiture of membership due to absence is something that we were using in the select board section back in Article 2, and so we added it here. So if somebody is not showing up to the meetings without calling in advance or letting the chairman know that they have a reason why they can't be there, they're not coming. Yes.
At the selectmen's meeting last night,
Yeah.
they had a discussion about committees and how they were formed and what their general obligations were to the town and what ones had actual authority versus what ones were advisory. And one of the discussions, and this is just a summarization, I don't remember all of it, but one of the discussions was how people got onto the committees and how they could possibly use people that weren't willing to make a commitment for like a 3-year committee appointment, but were willing to get on to do a specific thing within a committee thing. So they're in the process right now of discussing a little bit of this nature. So I'm not sure where they were going with it, because I didn't hear the whole meeting.
That's all strictly select board policies with committees, not something that needs to be in the charter.
But the good thing that you bring that up is, and something that's on the agenda, they're very anxious to meet with us in a workshop, and it's
Yes,
suggested 2
we're on their
dates.
agenda.
Well, I've been told that they're suggested 2 dates, and so we will figure out which
Yeah.
of those 2 dates
It was
will
on the
work.
agenda for last night.
Yes.
And I'm not sure, I didn't see that part of it. I just
No,
saw
they-
that it was there.
They came up with a suggestion of 2 dates.
Okay, good.
But, so this is one of the things that, whether it's at the first workshop or another, we will call out to them that this is a new section, and maybe they'll have some input on it. Bill?
Hey there. So just, I think I mentioned this once before, there's nothing wrong with it, but the adoption of Robert's Rules of Order, no one has ever followed that in Camden in my 17 years, and it can be quite tricky. Nothing wrong with it, but it's going to be a bit of a change to have every chair digest and understand Robert's Rules of Order. So just throwing that out.
Well, they should adopt rules of order for conducting the meetings.
And they do that.
I agree with that.
I think that would be better because
Just
Robert's rules are pretty formal.
Leave
A
the
lot of
word
committees
Robert's
are
rules
kind
out.
of
Yeah.
communal discussions.
Okay, adoption of rules of order for conducting meetings.
That happens every year at the beginning.
Because also at our town meetings and stuff, you've been there as the moderator, we do not use Robert's rules, we use the main moderator's rules.
Exactly.
And they
Which
are not the same, there
Not
are
exact.
differences. And you can,
Well, I think that's a good point. Adoption of rules of order for conducting meetings. Do we need a,
I've got another thing in that section. Can we eliminate that secretary? Because there are boards and committees that do not have a secretary.
somebody has to be responsible for taking the notes.
Well, with the select board and the planning board, there's a staffer, or there's a paid person who comes and takes the notes.
But for other committees, there are not, and
Okay?
somebody on the
Well, let's say
committee
a
needs to be
secretary if
responsible.
necessary.
All committees are responsible for
Right, they have to have
creating
right,
minutes or notes. So somebody has to act in that capacity.
I understand that. The planning board doesn't have a secretary because there's somebody paid by the town who comes and keeps minutes. So I'm saying is a secretary if required, or a secretary just for committees and commissions. I don't know, does the Conservation Commission have a secretary?
the Parks and Rec does not have a secretary.
Who takes the notes?
Really?
Holly or Beth,
Staff person,
employee.
right.
Right. I understand where Laurie's coming from on that. Then the word secretary there basically says we have to have this elected, appointed official. If we leave it out, then it leaves it up to that committee to do it however they,
And we do,
And secretary, if one is not
Reword it to
provided by
something
the
like
town or something like that.
A committee member must be appointed to
doesn't have to be a committee member
to
though.
manage the minutes, or someone has to be
Don't get-
appointed to manage.
I
the
don't even think we need to do that, because in B, it says, and a written record of each meeting shall be maintained and submitted
right.
to the town
That
office. So
covers it.
somebody's got to do it. We're saying it in B, it's got to be done. We could take out secretary, then we're covered.
You'd write digital too in there, Debbie. Just too, because most of the time now they're trying to do all the committee meetings with this room or wherever it's available.
Right, it's recorded electronically in most cases.
So could we just say, in B, all meetings shall be open to the public, and a record of each meeting shall be maintained and
There you go.
submitted?
Well, I love it.
Good. Which line are you on?
We're on B, the very first line, we're 86ing written, we're just saying record. Is that okay, Bill?
Bill Lucas.
This right to know law, the freedom of access law covers this in terms of the fact that there are to be minutes of meetings. So whether you say written or not, it's supposed to be done by statute.
Okay.
Right.
So we don't need to say written, because we're just requiring a record.
I agree.
Okay.
Could be video, could be audio, could be whatever.
And
All right.
and we've eliminated the word secretary from
From A, number 1.
from A1. So they only have a chair and a vice chair,
Right. Period.
period. Makes much more sense.
So C is the forfeiture of membership due to unexcused absence.
In C, we need to add language so that even if it's an excused absence, but it's prolonged, you need to be able to replace that person. No, we had this on the planning board probably 10 years ago, where we had a member.
I know where you're going with
who
this, but
was
I don't-
very sick, could not continue, and we were not allowed to replace him. We were down to 3 people.
I understand what you're saying, but the reason for the unexcused is for it's somebody that's not taking the time to do the job they signed up for.
Well, I don't
Because
disagree
somebody's
with that at
ill,
all.
you really can't do that to them. I understand what you're saying, but I don't agree that because they're ill or they're excused, doesn't mean they're not trying, it's just they can't be
But if they're
there.
prolonged, the committees are there to do a certain task or tasks. And if they can't do it because one of their members is out sick and likely to be out sick for a very long time,
So what is prolonged?
well, we need to think about that, but.
That's where it's up to the committee itself or the select board to step forward and say, you know, we know you want to do this, but you can't, and we need to fulfill the obligation with someone on the committee.
That's been done before.
So I don't think you have to put it in there in writing. I think the practice of it has to be dealt with
And it'll
by
be
the
handled
remaining
tactfully,
committee
too.
people.
Oh, yeah.
right?
Bill, do you have any,
Tactfully.
do you have any thoughts on this?
Not really, I'm just listening to the flow. Maybe if you get to any edits, I can comment on those, but,
Okay.
I don't have anything particular.
Lowry, I understand what you're saying. I would hope that an individual who all of a sudden realizes that they are going to be out of commission for, 6 weeks or whatever, if, or longer, that they would say to the chair of the committee, I have a problem and I need to step down. I mean, I think we have to leave some of this up to personal responsibility to some degree.
And also the
I'm just
chair.
saying that's-
to come
that's-
forward.
We experienced that, and it didn't happen,
But it's only happened once in forever,
probably.
I understand, I remember the position it put you guys in, and I sympathize, but it's only happened once, and
In fact, the select board member interfered and said, don't do anything.
me,
No, it wasn't you.
Wasn't me.
Or him.
so that's two of them now,
He's not here.
Uh,
yeah.
Wasn't
It
me.
wasn't he.
All right.
Wasn't me.
So I don't hear any consensus from the group that we need to change that.
Nope.
Okay, so
We need to vote on-
we've made two changes in 6. We've deleted secretary and we've changed just to rules of order, and we've deleted the word written in B. So can I have a motion on those changes?
Comment on D.
Oh, B?
On D as in dog.
D, I'm sorry, yes.
Filling of vacancies after advertising for interested citizens. There are some committees or boards where residency is required. Okay?
Planning board.
A citizen is not a resident of the town necessarily.
Oh, you're saying it's not specific enough?
Well, a citizen is a resident of a state or nation, not of a town. I mean, it's just a quirky definition. So I'm almost wondering if we should say after advertising for interested and qualified people, or
Why don't you just say Camden resident?
Well, not
Qualified.
everybody would have to be
Not
on the
everybody has to be a
design
Camden
team.
resident.
On the design team, we have Dave Jackson, who works for the library and is a representative sort of for the library and on the design
But
team,
he's a
but he lives in
citizen of
Rockport.
Rockport.
But he lives in Rockport.
I
I
know.
think the only places where Camden residency is required is the select board, and we're proposing to make it for the planning board going forward. But I think the rest of the committees, you can live in wherever, if you have an interest and could participate. And if those people were able to participate, well, more power to them, it's good to have people with lots of opinions. But I'm just saying that there are different requirements depending on what committee or board you're looking to serve on.
Now, this isn't about the select board, because this is about people that are appointed by the select board. So it would be planning board, it would be ZBA and all the, but not the select board itself.
Now, what about committees that are not necessarily appointed by the select board? I'm thinking like the toboggan committee. That's a subcommittee of the,
Yeah, that's sort of an ad hoc group, so I
and, you
don't
know,
think we
they're
have to
people
worry
from
about that.
all over, Tom
Yes, you
Cox
don't wanna
has been on
limit
it for
that.
years and he lives in Rockport.
You don't want to limit.
Yeah, you don't want to limit it to just Camden residents
Right.
for some committee.
But I don't think this is saying anything about ad hoc groups and stuff like that.
Okay.
This, because there's several of those that come up from time to time in special interest committees that people from all around the communities serve. So I think we're fine there.
If you changed it from interested to qualified, then each committee's qualifications would take care of whatever that qualification is, and you don't have to specify.
I don't like using the word qualified because that means you have to come up with some kind of.
What's qualified?
Yeah.
Well, no, when you fill out your interest form, you list why you're interested
Right.
in what
Right.
you're bringing to
Say-
the table.
Some of them say they want to serve, they've lived in this town for X number of years, and they want to give back to the community. Doesn't say anything about
Qualification.
being qualified or
That's a
anything.
qualification.
Okay, it's very general, but it also could be used.
Could be used to stop somebody from serving.
So, just a quick thought.
Yes.
This is not intended to be, this is a procedural provision. It's not intended to be any kind of a test that would apply to various ordinances or other things that are more specific on point. You could either leave it as citizen or you could put in persons, but it's really only intended to be talking about process, not qualifications. And I wouldn't mix it too much with trying to create any test in this. It seems to me it's just procedural.
So persons works.
Persons is generic enough that it includes everybody.
Fine.
Sounds like a good idea.
Persons.
So for number 6, our changes are in A2, deleting Roberts, in B, deleting written.
Well, you got A1, took
What
secretary.
was- Oh, and thank you, A1, deleting secretary, and in D, changing citizens to persons. Do I have a motion?
Wait a minute.
I'd like to just ask one question
Oh,
first.
well,
On that deleting secretary, is somebody going to be responsible for minutes of that meeting?
The committee is responsible for having a record that will be maintained and submitted to the town. So it'll be up to the committee to pick out how to do that. For instance, some committees have people alternate who takes the minutes. So B means that the committee's responsible.
And some committees, like, it's being recorded.
Yeah.
So there is a record being made of it. That's in another section. That's in another section where it says there will be a record of every meeting. So,
And the select board used to have secretary, but it's now staff.
Yeah.
But it goes back to the old ways of doing things, a lot of it is.
Okay, any other comments on 6? We have a motion. Did somebody second it?
Yes.
All those in favor of those changes? Unanimous, thank you. Separability, A, in section 7, separability. A was already there, and B is new. Mark Haskell, when we first reviewed this a number of months ago, Mark sort of made a suggestion that we add some language, I think it's actually sort of clearer than A, that says, should any of the provisions of this charter that are governed by the Maine revised statutes become invalid due to a change in state law after the adoption of this charter, the new Maine statute shall take precedence over such provision in this charter until the charter can be amended in accordance with Maine state law. That was a good suggestion.
Yeah, that's a very good suggestion.
Yes.
Seems to be,
when you said I made it, it made me think for a minute. I go, yeah, okay, I remember that.
you did, many months ago.
Law changes, we have to follow the state law. It's that simple.
You're one to talk about the law changing.
I know it.
Okay, can I have a motion then to accept the edits and changes to Article 9, general provisions?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? 6-1? Oh, you raised your hand.
Opposed.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. 6-1.
What is it you oppose?
I think it's a mistake not to mention the ownership issues that we discussed.
Oh, okay.
Should be an issue.
It is-
Oh, in the conflict, you mean?
Wants to exclude,
Conflicts of interest, okay.
Okay.
All right, okay.
I think the reason we have regulations is because we can't always count on people to act in everyone's best interest.
we'll make sure you're,
I mean, it's been discussed earlier. It's
no,
not easy to
we'll make
discuss
sure
it.
that's in the record though, Lowry, that you would prefer, you would like to exclude public corps. We'll make sure it's in the record.
They certainly can bring it back up during public hearings, too. Yeah.
That's all right, can be done. Okey doke, that is it for number 2. Thank you all very much. And now we need to move on to growth management article. We had a long discussion, we have a discussion with Bill, we've had a long discussion with Jeremy Martin, and we have some things to resolve. And Lowry, I will turn this over to you, this growth management article.
And I don't No,
That was the article, we had it from last, we had it in last,
It's the one that's got the little green
2320.
highlights on it, that guy.
all right, find that. This is
annotated
agenda.
version for discussion purposes, looks like that. Or you may have one without the notes.
Okay,
One of the things that's kind of pushing my overall thoughts on this is I think that this is really important to keep in the public discussion and not let it go to a completely staff management situation. And that's why I've felt strongly about some situations.
this is the one.
So, I mean, the first thing we need to decide is whether or not the town shall or may revise the comprehensive plan every 10 years. Because the SPO has gone away, so that's no longer a state obligation, and it used to be a state obligation, so we had to do it every 10 years. And I think it's such an important process to hear what people are thinking and to try to look forward 10 years that I think it's important to have in our document that we're working on now to say that must be done every 10 years, as opposed to may be done every 10 years.
And the difference between those two words is, it's very interesting when you look at our language. Every time I get into it, I find, whoa. But will well, let's just say that the word shall is more obligatory than with will. Will is very, almost willy-nilly compared to shall. And I think these documents, frankly, are really important, and they should be given the shall versus the will. Word.
But we're doing may and must.
Well, yeah. Will or may versus and shall and must. I mean, I think shall and must are pretty similar. Will and may are closer. So it's permissive versus part of that, or obligatory
Yes, there's
versus obligatory.
Yeah, optional versus requirement. I think there were, a lot of people who were involved in the whole planning process overall that were disappointed to see the SPO go away because they felt that they provided a good service to provide assistance, technical assistance, all that kind of stuff for the towns. And who knows whether or not it'll come back at some point. It might. But I still think it's very important for the town to have a comprehensive plan that is available to all the citizens, it's available to all the committees, and it's regularly used to see how we're doing. It's our map for the next 10 years. It's
a guide.
Pardon?
It's a guide.
Yeah.
It's a guide, a map, a guide, to try to tell us where we think we're going to be going. And we acknowledge that it will change because there's other things that pop up that are more important. But I would hate to think that, when the current one expires, which is in another, 7 years or so, that somehow people feel that the town is too busy. It doesn't have time to update it, and therefore we'll just skip it because it's an optional thing to do.
One of
So-
the other things, I'm sorry. One of the other things to me about the importance of having a comprehensive plan is that it actually gives select boards a good starting place for setting priorities. I mean, which they have just did in their meeting before last, they came up with priorities. Otherwise, I can see the select board is supposed to be sort of the leadership of the community, and a comprehensive plan gives them a starting point in many ways. And as you said, Lowry, events may intervene and make things change, but the select board has a basis on which to be setting priorities and for setting budget priorities as well. It's that background that I think support for them. Yeah.
Isn't it state law that says every town must have?
No, it's not.
Not when the
No, no,
SPO
no.
went away.
What was that word?
State planning office.
State planning office.
Okay.
They were, but the previous governor eliminated them.
Bonjour did that.
And so therefore, there's not even anybody, there's some people in the state that will take a look at your comp plan and offer you opinions, but there's no official review and approval like there used to be.
Okay.
But
But
The comp plan is very important.
isn't it still state law you have to do one, though?
No,
It's
no.
not.
But the comp plan is very important for kind of internal town guidance, but it can also be very important when you're applying for grants. When you apply for federal grants, many times they'll say, okay, well, what's the comprehensive plan say about, a forest you're trying to preserve or a bridge you're trying to put in or whatever it is. They want to see whether or not it's a politically urgent or kind of new thing that popped up, or this is something that the town's been talking about for a number of years that we think would be important to the town. So it helps us in applications for grants if we've got a current comprehensive plan.
So you got two things tied together, though. We don't have an implementation committee or program, right?
That was kind of section
Kind
two
of,
of what
they're
we're gonna
bunched
talk about.
together. I mean, I don't have a problem with the must with the comp plan. The other program, I mean, we haven't really discussed that to what it's
Well,
going
I
to
think we'll
be.
get to that. Could we, do we feel comfortable enough, at least making a decision on that the town shall have a comprehensive plan?
Yes.
So where are you now? You're still on,
The start of Article 7, growth management and long-range planning.
and it's the first, but the first green block says may or must.
Yeah.
That's where you are.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't have a problem with the must as far as the comp plan, but I do have a problem with the must with the implementation, whatever, is too much wording
Implementation, right.
with this mass law.
Well, how the implementation program is created is handled almost down in in D, implementation program. The implementation
Wait a
program could
minute,
be
wait a
a
minute, D
specific.
what, D where?
You've got.
Next page, John.
Next page. Sorry, Deb, I just want to make sure
No,
I'm following you.
D where it says on the second page,
I
implementation
see it now, yeah,
program.
membership consists of, yeah.
So how we have proposed structuring the implementation program is pretty specific. There are other ways to say you have to have an implementation program, and one of them could be that the select board is responsible for implementing and directing the implementation of the comprehensive plan and leave it at that or give it more structure. So I think that you have to have an implementation program. You don't necessarily have to have an implementation committee to do that, which is one of the sort of the debates we've had both with Jeremy and I think we've had some conversations. I think Bob Falciani has weighed in too, concerned about that. So I think you need to have some way of implementing it. I mean, if you have one, but we can debate the best way to have an implementation program as a separate item, I think.
Well, my concern is we're going to add an extra layer to this
Yes.
for approval
Right.
That's
process.
how you structure the program, not that you have one. And maybe the term ought to be implementation plan.
Because it's the code office or the planning board to make sure that whatever the applicant, whatever it is meeting the ordinance, right? So that would be meeting the ordinance.
That would be site plan review and zoning, not
Right, but I
necessarily
mean,
comp plan.
what the implementation committee would be basically making sure that it follows whatever the comp plan says, and
What
there's
the
supposed to be time.
recommendations or strategies
John, I
are.
think you're equating implementation program to implementation committee, and we're not there.
No, I just
think it's-
want to make
if
sure we
we've got-
don't get there to another layer.
Well, I think
you know.
it's two different conversations. I think to say, we're going to have a comprehensive plan that's updated every 10 years, and we're going to have an implementation program of some kind, leaves it very open in terms of how that can be handled. Is that handled strictly by staff? Is that handled by volunteers? Is that handled by combination? What are they able to do? It doesn't put strictures on it.
Not at this point in this paragraph, it doesn't. We're not saying how the implementation program has to be put together or staffed. We're just saying you got to have a program to implement it. Why do you have one? Or why do you have one?
I kind of think I understand what John is saying. I think we're creating another layer of bureaucracy there.
There's potential
A
for that.
potential one. We have the committee that reviews the comprehensive plan, and they send it to the town, to the selectmen, okay? You're going to put a committee in between there to say this is how we're going to do it.
No, she
No,
just
we're
said we're
not.
not putting a committee in there.
This wording doesn't say we're inserting a committee.
But it's the unintended consequences, I think, because we've had controversial items, well, thinking right off the Miller House, how that divided the whole town.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and.
Down by the
Yacht Club. So if you got a select board committee at that time, a group at that time saying, okay, put their hands up in the air, we're going to put a group together and just make it go through a town committee, which could happen because you're giving them the authority to implement a committee, correct?
Not in this paragraph.
Not in this paragraph, but it leads to it.
It could, well, we'll get to that paragraph. We'll get to that paragraph. I don't
Okay.
think it, let's wait till we get all the way through and we can revisit whether saying an implementation program mandates a committee. It's not mandating a committee. It's a possibility, but that would be this, well, I think let's get all the way through and then revisit whether,
Well, I would start this off with a motion that I would agree to the must for the comp plan, not the implementation, okay? That's my motion. If nobody wants to second it, I wanted the record that I don't.
Well,
Because we're addressing this first
First paragraph up here.
Let me understand your motion. Are you saying that you move that this say a municipal growth management program must include a comprehensive plan and may include an implementation plan?
No, I don't even want to
Okay,
talk
what
about
are you
information
saying?
lane. I think the information now is, I keep me saying that about 40 times, I might get it right, that it's handled through the code office, it's handled through the planning board, right, at the present levels.
So I'm asking you what your motion is, and you're not answering.
My
that
motion
question.
is to just to say, growth management program must include a comp plan.
And then
That's
we-
it.
And then we strike out the rest of that sentence?
Yes.
Well, that's what I'm trying to understand.
Well, that's what I said, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's hard to. Oh, I hate these things.
John,
Huh?
don't blame it on the mask.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm losing it.
okay. So in that case, if that is your motion, I have before we go any further, Bill, are you still with us?
He's on mute again.
Bill, are you on mute?
Yeah, I was on mute, but yes, I'm still here.
Okay. Just to check this language, if John's motion is seconded and passes, oh, it has?
Yeah.
It has been seconded? Oh, okay. So this is part of the discussion. If that's the case, if this would pass, we would also need to delete in accordance with 30A MRS 4321, because that state language says may, does it not?
It does.
So that language wouldn't, it would be a conflict to say, in accordance with, would it? Because we're saying must instead of the state language on the comprehensive plan. So we would have to delete in accordance with.
Is the motion?
The mo,
It was hard for me to hear some of this. Could you
Okay.
repeat the motion?
So the motion is in, let me see which sentence it is, in the second sentence, beginning with, in accordance with Title 38 MRS 4321, a municipal growth management must include a comprehensive plan, period. So my question is, since 30A 4321 says may, if we change that to must, we aren't in accordance with 4321, because the state language is may.
Right, that's just a mistake, because that's not what the statute says.
Isn't the statute, the statute is permissive, doesn't require it.
I
So,
think the must is a mistake. Must is a mistake, and would be not a good idea to put in a charter language that's contrary to the state statute.
So you're saying we should go back to
This
must,
discussion.
may.
Have this before?
I'm not saying
I thought we already had a discussion where a town is allowed to have an ordinance that is more restrictive than the state regulations, but not less restrictive.
Can I hear
so
you?
you're saying this, that the town may not be more restrictive?
saying the charter could require there to be these things. I'm just saying the statute is permissive.
Right, and so we would need to remove the reference to the statute in this sentence.
That would be one way to handle it, yes.
Let's do that. This thing is.
So,
But it should, the comp plan should say a review more than anything, correct? You're not rewriting a new plan, you're reviewing what's in place and then updating.
the last time was a complete rewrite.
Right, I know, but it's,
So I think if you would say Camden recognizes that in order to survive and prosper in a quickly changing world, it needs to be diligent about providing for and implementing growth management and long-range planning, and shall have a municipal growth management program that includes comprehensive plan.
okay, I can deal with that. I can live with that.
What did I say? And shall have a municipal growth management program that includes a comprehensive plan. So I move to amend John French's motion to say, Camden recognizes that in order to survive and prosper in a quickly changing world, it needs to be diligent about providing for and implementing growth management and long-range planning, and shall have a municipal growth management program that includes a comprehensive plan.
I'll second it.
So in
That's good, yeah.
the way we handle this is we vote on the amendment, we discuss the amendment since it's been seconded, and we vote on the amended language, and if that passes, we're good. If it doesn't pass, then we go back to the original
Yeah, but we
motion.
got to go to yours because through discussion with Bill, we decided we had to pull out the MRSA, and so, I mean, can I make a motion to rescind my motion and say, Karen, it's just easy, and vote on the one you read, because it meets the same, it does the same thing. It just,
You are asking to withdraw your motion?
yes,
your
I am,
original
and we'll
motion.
vote now, second yours. Okay?
I think it's good that,
But yours now cannot be an amendment, it has to be a motion on its own.
Right.
She's basically said everything we wanted to say, it's just taking out the MRSA part of it. MRS, yeah, MRS.
Instead of must, we've added it in there
Yes,
directly.
may.
moved and seconded to change the language as I read it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing in here about and an implementation program.
Not in this sentence.
Yep.
Okay.
And we're not done yet. If you want to revisit it, we can, you know that.
I'm sure we'll revisit this in a couple of ways. Particularly, I'm sure we'll revisit it when we have workshops with a workshop with the select board and when we have a public meeting. Is there any further discussion on that new language? All those in favor? Opposed? It's 5-2. So it passes. So the new language is, for the record, for Jean, Camden recognizes that in order to survive and prosper in a quickly changing world, it needs to be diligent about providing for and implementing growth management and long-range planning, and shall have a municipal growth management program that includes a comprehensive plan. Period. Okay. Hope you got that, Jean. All right. So the next section, Larry, I'm sorry, you're doing this?
Well, you were doing fine.
No.
The planning board, we didn't have any changes. I think after our discussion with Jeremy, unless anybody else has any comments on that. This is one place where we said that they have to be Camden residents. They cannot live outside of town. And in the zoning ordinance, we just added this pursuant to the comp plan.
What is the wording now with the tying the two together?
There isn't this
There
language.
isn't, because there is no growth management, long-range planning in the current charter.
And there's no language about this zoning.
Saying this is then in all ordinances would have to be pursuant to the comp plan, right? You'd have to change them all to,
No, because right now, you cannot have an ordinance that is contrary to the comp plan, okay?
do we have any that way?
No, because you can't do it. And
Okay.
that's something the code officer always takes a look at, if there's a new one brought up. But the comp plan is intended to be a pretty broad brush, okay?
Right.
So it's got to be really obviously contrary to what's in the comp plan for the code officer to come forward and say, okay, we can't do this.
Okay, but I was always told that the comp plan was a guide and the zoning ordinance was the law.
That's correct.
Right.
But for instance, if the comp plan says that in zone X, you cannot build a shoe store, okay, then you're prohibited from building a shoe store there. Are you allowed to build a grocery store? Perhaps, because it doesn't say grocery stores, okay? But, so you can't do something that's contrary, specifically contrary to what the comprehensive plan states.
Okay,
And that's why a lot of the language in the comp plan is broader language that allows for interpretation.
Isn't part of the object of a comp plan almost like a wish list as opposed to actual?
That's a part of it, where there are suggestions saying, in the future, we should look at this and try to decide how we want to handle it.
That's like a recommendation that's made as opposed to
Right.
a more specific statement in
Like
the comp plan.
a futuristic wish list of, we want to be entirely green by the year 3000 or whatever.
I don't think that would go in a comp plan, but
Yeah,
I
but
see
I-
we're trying to come up with something specific.
well, it's like saying that the growth, then they vote a few years on the comp plan of Cobb Road, that up there could be a potential growth area for, at one time, that was.
Growth
what-
area for the last 20-plus years in the comp.
Right, and then they had the, industrial park area over by Union Street. That was all early comp plan, early decisions, long time. So, I mean, it's just like, the lack of a better word, it's a guide for the community in the direction they want to go, or think about, or whatever, right? Wrong?
Yeah, wish list.
Yeah.
Yeah, wish
I think
list.
it's stronger than a wish
Yeah.
list, to me. I mean, it's more of a sort of a concrete direction without listing performance standards and those kinds of things that you'd find in a zoning ordinance.
So Bill has a comment here. Has he got something to add to this before we vote on this particular? Because he's saying pursuant is too limiting and restrictive. So what is his?
Bill? You're,
Well, I heard you say something about being too limited or too restrictive, and you guys have been talking about the concept of what is a comprehensive plan and what does it mean about compatibility. So maybe two or three thoughts. One, any ordinance adopted is supposed to be what the statute calls consistent with the comprehensive plan, which sounds like it's a test, and it's not really a test. Under the main Supreme Court's interpretation of that statute, the simple thought you should take away is this: as long as it's not prohibited in the comprehensive plan, the zoning ordinance can adopt almost anything that's lawful. So the comp plan, in order to cancel an ordinance, going back to John's point a second ago of it being sort of more informational, is a good point in that all the action is at the ordinance. It somewhat deflates the idea of the value of the comprehensive plan with regard to how much it's going to control things. So, for example, if the comp plan said, in the traditional village district, there shall be no nuclear power plants, then an ordinance that adopted a provision for a nuclear power plant use would be inconsistent. The comprehensive plans almost never, and I don't think they should, get to that level of detail. Those are for ordinances. So that's issue number one. As far as your second issue of, can it be mandatory in the Camden Charter to have a comprehensive plan? The short answer is yes, it could be. It is not what the statute says now, because that's a statewide statute that deals with all towns. And frankly, for 20 years, towns wouldn't adopt comprehensive plans when they were required to. So there was a whole wasted effort for a long period of time. A comprehensive plan is a guide. It's a philosophical statement. It's a wish So a couple thoughts, and hopefully I've touched the issues you've just been touching on, but those are my thoughts.
So Deb, is he saying, if I understand it, said that he should say where it says the zoning ordinance must be consistent, and not put in pursuant to, right? So that's what Bill is saying?
I think, if I interpret what Bill is saying, consistent is adequate, particularly because of, well, the sort of the main Supreme Court's language.
So just not put in pursuant to and just write, the zoning ordinance must be consistent with the comp plan adopted by the town meeting, correct?
Well, I almost wonder if pursuant to isn't redundant.
I think if we just say consistent, we'll still get there. You know, I think that pursuant to probably is, it's a bit more restrictive and it's probably redundant.
Does that work, Bill?
Yeah.
Well, it's probably two versions of the same thing, but I would very much prefer that the word be consistent, because we know what that means by statute, and we wouldn't necessarily know what pursuant to means, and a lot of case law around that. So if you guys are good with consistent, me in my position as the guy who has to deal with some of these issues would very much appreciate using the word consistent and not pursuant to.
So moved. Consistent. Right.
Second.
So the motion is to delete the words pursuant to and from the third line in zoning ordinance B number 1. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? 7-0. Thank you. Okay, keep on rolling,
Yeah.
Lowry.
On the comp plan, C1, we had a discussion, and Jeremy was involved in the discussion, about who are the people that are on this committee that does the comprehensive plan. There was a discussion about advertising for people. There was discussion about using the members of the planning board. And I've been through 2 of these, and invariably it comes down to the planning board doing it. I mean, the planning board is usually people that understand planning and zoning issues, number one. They've been there for a long time. They've got institutional knowledge, and they are always reaching out to other people in the town that may be interested to want to come in and participate in maybe one chapter, but don't want to be sitting there for 3 or 4 or 5 years to rewrite the comp plan. And that's what we did last time. I remember when we last advertised for the comp plan committee, there were 3 people volunteered, and that was it. And so that was ditched, and it went to the planning board. And we had multiple people over that many-year period of time that participated in writing the plan.
Comment on that. By putting this directly in the lap of the planning board, would that added responsibility be a deterrent to getting people to serve on the planning board?
I don't think so, because the comp plan comes up once every 10 years. It could take, I mean, the last time we redid it, it took us almost 6 years to rewrite the thing, because we rewrote the whole thing. If all you're doing is making adjustments, you can do that in a year, probably a year and a half. But I would be surprised if people
I'm
said,
just curious on that, because it's like with this committee here, we're doing something that hasn't been done in 20 years.
40 years.
40 years, okay?
Right,
So
40
this
years.
is something,
Plaque says on the wall.
yeah. So but you understand my comment on that. I wasn't there, you were there, so you understand.
Yes, John?
You're right, 100%. That's, whatever. It's been, that's okay. The planning board has, the one that's stepped up to the plate to finish it. But I still think that first level should be the people get the first bite of the apple. Whether they step up to the plate, they should put it out for advertising. It's not a it's not a big deal to put it out, to find it as interest. That way, at least you keep in, what is the word, transparency available, or whatever, that people have a first chance to be part of this committee. You are right that the planning board has done the last 2. They have used expertise people, persons or whatever within the community that stepped up to the plate and did whatever particular item they needed But I think still that first bite needs to be the citizen. And then if it doesn't work, then we follow, we can go back to the planning board.
But I think we were to write something in here that basically said that the comprehensive planning committee shall have X number of members. And initially, the select board shall advertise for people who are interested in doing that work. And if they don't get enough, then it goes to the planning board. It's almost like a booby prize or something going to the planning board to do the work. That's really kind of strange.
No, but I honestly, I really feel that we need to offer it out to the public first. I agree, it's been very tough to get people to sign up for something like this, because it is a lot of work, as you are aware of, you've done it, and thank you for your service. But it's just, you need to put that layer in there. You really do. You just need to just say, here's your chance. If they don't step up, that's a whole different game. But you gotta allow it.
I don't understand why we need to do that.
Because we're a town meeting government, that's what we do. We make sure that the citizens of this town have every opportunity to be part of the process. If you take that away in the first step.
But there's other committees that are tasked with doing things.
Yeah, but we're talking about the comp plan. We're not talking about any other committee. This is a living document for the community, which is supposed to be a guide, as we're all, so they ought to have at least have an opportunity for the citizens to weigh in.
Can we compromise on this a little bit and say, you ask for people to work in conjunction with the planning board for the comprehension committee? That way you're asking for people to come in and work with them, but still, you're not saying it's a booby prize if they get it if nobody shows up.
Sorry, Deb.
I have a thought. Further down in here, we have a sentence that starts consistent with 30A MRS 4324. Planning board shall, and I want to suggest a word provide, but provide for a broad range of opportunity for public comment and review and participation. Can we not say that? And doesn't that say that the townspeople have a broad opportunity to participate?
But it's not saying that they're actually a member of the committee. You're just saying participation. You're going to invite them in to do whatever. But it doesn't say that they're a voting member of that committee. I want to make sure that they have the opportunity to be part of the process from day one to the whatever. I'm not saying they're going to step up, but we need to at least provide that and have the
Give them
same
the opportunity.
Yes, because I think they have the same rights and provisions, whatever, as the planning board member that's part of this committee.
Okay.
If we said that the select board is responsible for creating a comprehensive plan committee which shall include the planning board and other citizens as appointed by the select board.
That's fine.
Well, no, it's not, because you need to say and no more than 2 other citizens or
Right,
5
yeah.
other citizens or 50.
Yeah, there needs
You
to be a
can't
limit
have-
on
You
that.
can't have a room full of people. And I think you need to add additional structure if you're going to open it up like that. I think I'm with Deb on the language that she has suggested. Just from being through it, anybody that came in and said, hey, I'd like to talk to you guys, I got some ideas about the harbor or the parks or whatever it was, we said, come on down, we're glad to have that input. And there were, Robin McIntosh wrote the downtown section.
And she wasn't on the planning board.
And she wasn't on the planning board, but we knew that she had good knowledge about it, she had interest, she writes well, so that was a really good fit. We were glad to have her participate. And we had that from other people too, who came in and participated in stuff. But, if you've got a planning board, they've already got an organization, they've already got a chair and a vice chair and all that kind of stuff. And I think that they're eager to have participation from other people. And I don't think that this would be ruling that out at all.
Yeah, but the other thing is, things are changing. Government changes all the time. There's the way things are done. It's certainly different from when you and I were doing it earlier and how they handle things. And you don't know, we could put this, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, but we could put this out for an interest form and get 10 citizens that want to be part of the comp plan. Then what do? Say, no, thank you, you can't be part of it because we want the planning board to do it, and they're going to say, okay, you want government to do government's job. That's basically what's happening, not the citizens doing the citizens' work.
John, the planning board is citizens, they're not staff.
I understand that, but you're still, I forget the word that Bill uses for that committee, but group, that board.
Quasi-legal.
Right, so you're more than just a regular group. You're actually part of the decision makers of the town.
Right.
Because you're part of the planning board system, you know what I mean, the review of the ordinances and such. I just think that we need to make sure that the citizens get the first bite of the apple, that's all I'd say.
It'd be included as,
And how is that different John, than this, what is in there now? Shall
it's-
solicit and encourage a broad range of opportunities. How is that different than the transparency?
But from what I'm seeing, I'm listening to, it doesn't sound like they're invited to be a member, you know what I
they're
mean?
not a voting member.
They're not,
Voting member.
And I think John's point is he wants people in addition to the planning board, to be allowed to be voting members of the comprehensive plan development committee. That, I think that is what John's point
Right.
is, not that they,
Set a number of citizens outside of the planning board, like
up
1,
to,
2, 3, yeah, up to.
needs to make it a uneven number.
But, I mean, I'm just thinking the committee should be a certain size and break it up however, because you don't know how many people you're going to get. If you only get 2, then fine, you get 2, and then 5 are going to be planning board. I don't know. But I don't think, I just want to make sure the opportunity's there. That's all I care about.
I understand what you're saying, and I think if we said that the select board shall create a comprehensive plan committee made up of up to 11 people, including the 5
Citizens.
regular members of the planning board.
And citizens from within the community.
Well, I mean, then they're, yeah, and general, I mean.
So you're going to say there'd be 11 voting members?
Well, no, I don't think you have to say that if you're saying they're the committee.
Okay.
Well, I don't No, I understand what you're saying, and I don't have an issue with
I agree
it.
John, because you have that further wording in there that says everybody's invited to come and give their opinion or come to talk. So you have to differentiate between those people who are invited to participate and those people who are
part of the committee.
part of the committee.
That are voting,
So it would be voting members.
of up to,
Does 11 sound too many?
yes.
Well, you've got, the planning board's got 5 regular members and 2 alternates. So I think you need to include 7 from the planning board, not 5.
Okay,
As, I mean, the alternates are frequently kind of planning board members in training.
so that gives you 4
from the
citizens
general
outside of the planning board.
Okay. And Larry, I'm not downplaying when you guys work in, I appreciate the hours and hours and hours that your groups put in, the planning boards from the past, you know, because I know what you
Well,
did.
I
do.
just- I just remember when we set out for volunteers, we probably
think they're
lost
gonna be
3
lucky
months
to get
because
4.
nobody, we had 3 people.
I know that, but that's
Right, and
just
that-
saying that it needs, that's a layer we need to have.
You don't. Yeah,
that's
but
why
at
you
least
say
like
up
John
to
says,
11, to include 7 members.
Just say the members of the planning board, don't say how many there are.
Do we have to, well,
You have to have the specific
We
number of
include
them.
the CEO, town staff, or the development
we've
director.
got the town staff
never on the
taken care of
committees.
later on. The
Not on
town
the
staff
committee.
would be the
He
liaison.
said they're not on the
Planning
committee.
director would
there's
be the
support staff.
liaison.
We're getting,
There's support staff liaison, they're never on the committee.
okay, that's fine.
I mean, the town manager is not on the select board.
No, it's not, she's not.
They're not
Okay.
voting members. Of up
Okay.
to 11 voting members to include all members of the planning board, we'll put it that way.
That's a good way to put it.
All members of the planning board and for
Community members at large.
Citizens of the town of Camden.
For other citizens of the town of Camden?
Yeah.
Other, because the planning
for
board has to
additional,
be citizens.
additional,
They have to be
for
residents.
additional citizens of the town of Camden.
If we're establishing this committee, then we also need to establish a term of service. You can't have just say, here's the committee, but
But that's up to the select board. They're
If-
putting that together.
If it's going to be reviewed every 10 years, and you said the last time it took 6 years? So if you set the term of 3 years,
I don't think it's necessary to set the terms, because under the select board powers, we're telling the select board I think that's, I don't think we need to set the terms, because
They usually
you're going to be on
sunset.
the comp plan till you create the comp plan and it goes to the town vote.
And once it's voted on, the committee is sunsetted.
I would think.
Yeah,
Bill, do you think we
usually.
need terms?
Well, it's a different issue between the term of a member on the comp plan and how long it might take to get through their work. It sounds like you're wrestling with both those issues. I'm just scrolling through my head, other charters.
They don't have, the other charters don't
Some
have
charters-
this.
Some charters will have it as a standing committee, as opposed to when you're actually going to do some work. I suppose if the idea is that Camden is not going to have this committee until you're ready to go and start work, and therefore there would be the appointments. You could do it two ways. I suppose you could put a time frame, assuming that it's highly likely they'll be finished within 2 or 3 years, or you could simply say that they'll serve until they've prepared a report to the
Select board for inclusion in
Town meeting.
town meeting.
something, determining when their work is done. I have known comp plan committees to go on for years in some other towns.
Well, it's 6 years, you've said, so. It's basically till the work is done.
Frankly, what I tend to see sometimes is comp plan committee fatigue, that the members are just exhausted by the time it's completed. It's a huge elephant to eat, all the things that possibly could go into a comp plan. It can be a lot of work.
As some of us know. The committee,
That's right,
the committee shall serve until, I like the sunsetting idea.
until the adoption of,
Well, you know what we want to say, Deb, so you can,
We have to make a motion. We're making a serious change here.
yeah, I know.
So,
And we know that if anybody, at some point, anybody gets bored with any committee, they can say, sorry, I'm done, and they walk out and,
But that could happen on the planning board.
That could
I
happen
mean,
anytime.
that's any board.
that could happen anytime.
It's
so
nothing
you,
to do-
what does that mean? I don't need to try to put anything in here?
I think what might happen in practicality is that there are some times when the comp plan needs to be completely redone. Because it's just too old. Maybe that's once every 20 years or something like that. And then there's other times where it's going to be a fairly short process because you're really just kind of updating it. The same thing with this committee. I mean, Deb and I have talked about is that this committee should meet, I don't know, maybe every 5 years, 7 years, something like that, so that when we finally get around the meeting, there are still people alive, other than Bob, who worked on it previously and can offer us guidance. And it's not this huge amount of work to do. It's just kind of updating it. So maybe if we put in language that the term shall be to the length of time that the select board believes will be necessary to finish the work, or it's got to be pretty squishy, pretty open-ended.
Forever, just right.
Yeah, because you don't want to say 3 years and all of a sudden it takes
We
4.
need to really say, though,
I'm just wondering if we need to say.
just say we'll put a committee together and include citizens from the town, the opportunity for citizens, and then the planning board, and up to 11 members.
Yeah.
And we could write this thing in.
Yeah, it could go on
a
and on and
book,
on,
right.
and we don't have to do that.
And actually, because we've separated, in 2 really talks about making from time to time, it may be appropriate to amend the comprehensive plan. Those kinds of things probably can be handled by the planning board, making recommendations as opposed to sort of the rewrite. So the language is the select board shall appoint a comprehensive plan committee of up to 11 voting members to include all members of the planning board and 4 additional citizens of the town of Camden.
That's it, that's all you have to.
So moved, Deb.
Okay.
Actually, I don't think you even need the number 4. So it'd be up to 11 people, including all members of the planning board,
And additional citizens of the town.
and additional citizens of,
Okay.
so,
In case,
Rewrite,
in case
rewrite.
our planning board number changes for some strange reason.
right.
Then, we would,
Or if you have vacancies on the planning board, or you don't have the alternates, if it just includes all members of the planning board, not to exceed 11
Well,
people.
that's why it says up to 11 people,
Yeah,
so.
no, you're
Right.
opening yourself up to a problem.
We'll get into the
If there's
weeds.
only four-
All right, I
if
have
there's
a-
only 4 members of the planning board, and you appoint 7 citizens, and then all of a sudden the planning board goes up to full staff, will you tell 3 of the citizens, sorry, you have to leave?
no, okay. So I have an idea. Because there's, what if, would it be all right with you all if we take some time to, I take some time to rewrite that paragraph rather
Fine
than
with
trying
that,
to
yeah.
rush that right this
Yes,
very minute?
yes.
And submit it to you for the next meeting
Yes.
for approval? I'm a little uncomfortable because there's
Good idea.
a second clause that needs to be rewritten, and I would like us to be able to move forward.
Yes.
Would it kind of help Deb with this? Would it be fair to say that we're in agreement on this notion that it's going to be the 7 members of the planning board plus 4 citizens for a period of time that it takes to get the work done?
Yes,
And then
And how we word that,
that's the concept, come up with the word, yes.
is that a motion?
Yeah,
Well, I thought we were,
it's a thought.
intent.
Well, that's the intent, okay.
yes.
Yes.
The intent, all right, so Deb will work on this paragraph,
Okay.
submit for the next
Need
time.
a sticky note? Okay, sticky note.
Okey-doke. So we do have a last sentence to number 1 that says, consistent with MRS.
Can we take that
We'll have
out?
to say the committee shall provide a broad range of opportunity for public comment and review, blah, blah. So I'll fix that whole paragraph.
And as far as the consistent with the MS whatever, can we just say consistent with Maine law? Forget the numbers in there? Because those numbers may change next week.
That's right, yeah.
Oh,
What?
I wonder about that.
Well, you talked to
That's
Bill
Bill.
about that. That's a,
Consistent with
I think you
current Maine
I
law.
think we have to have the specific, but,
well, if there's no office anymore, right? So there's nobody to review it up there, so,
but the legislature.
yeah, true. Okay.
Right, That's just why you
Forgot
say
about that.
consistent with current Maine law. And that should cover whatever numbers they come up with.
Bill, do we need the specific one, the specific section number?
I don't think so, but you could. But I agree that it's sometimes an event that, you know, you can put the section in and say it has amended for county time, and that's fine.
Okay. That's wordsmithing. So number 2 is, from time to time, it may be appropriate to amend the comprehensive plan to satisfy changes in state or federal regulations or to reflect changes in how Camden citizens want to direct the town in between the normal 10-year cycle. In those cases, the planning board shall recommend changes after soliciting input as described in the preceding section from all concerned and submit the proposed changes to the select board for its consideration of inclusion at the next meeting. So that's really laying in between amendments at the foot of the planning board.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, me too.
That sounds fine.
Okay. Lowry, D.
Implementation program. This has been back and forth a lot on this. The whole idea is that the comprehensive plan lays out lots of different things, as Mark's talked about, you know, this wish list. We should consider this, we should consider that. You know, do we want to have energy efficient streetlights, all kinds of things. And it's several hundred items that we kind of put forth and say, these are things the town should keep in its vision as it moves forward. And we know that some of these will age, some of them will get resolved otherwise, and some new things will pop up. The idea with the implementation committee is that it would be a group that would kind of keep an eye on the items that are listed in the comp plan, because all the items that are listed in the comp plan will also say the town should think about doing this. We'll have a short description of it. We'll say, the groups involved are the planning board, Parks and Rec, the planning director, the select board, whatever. It might be 3 or 4 groups, it might be a dozen groups that are involved in that. But the idea is this implementation committee would have the responsibility at the direction of the select board and the town manager to say, okay, we need to start working on this one now, so we've got all these groups, and how can we coordinate with those groups to make sure that they participate in this process? And the comprehensive plan just doesn't sit on a shelf somewhere and gather dust. It's actually a living document that's used and regularly referred to.
But this is that layer right here that I'm worried about. You're giving a group, a committee, kind of specific powers.
But
And the
that's why we're thinking of modifying it a little bit.
Yeah,
And-
I have an idea.
Yeah, you want to talk about your idea?
I have an idea. Because I think this gets to where we want to go, but I also think it satisfies the, the concern about creating the other layer, as well as sort of some supplanting the select board's role. So let me read this to you. Implementation program. Following the adoption of the comprehensive plan and any subsequent amendments, the select board shall direct the implementation of the plan's recommendations and strategies. 1, the town manager shall be responsible for working with appropriate department heads to incorporate implementation strategies and department work plans, notifying other responsible parties as identified in the comprehensive plan and coordinating implementation strategies. 2, comes really from our discussion with Jeremy. Town committees and boards shall incorporate implementation strategies and committee work plans as assigned to them in the comprehensive plan. And that's one of the things that Jeremy was saying, that ought to be included in their committee's work plan. The select board may appoint a comprehensive plan implementation committee to assist the town manager and town committees to develop implementation programs to which they are assigned by the select board or the voters through adoption of a related article at town meeting. The select board shall determine the membership and terms of the comprehensive implementation committee, except it shall include at least one member of the planning board. So that we're not really creating, the select board has the option of creating a committee that can help the town manager and town committees, but that's not mandatory. And we're stating, as we did actually in the first one, that the town manager is responsible for working with the department heads, and then we're saying that the select board's going to direct the town committees to incorporate the comprehensive plan things in their work plans. So we're not creating a layer unless the select board wants to create a layer to assist, a committee to assist.
I think that maybe a way this would work is if they are smaller tasks. And it's easier for the town manager via the select board or in conjunction with the select board to say, okay, we're going to work on, pick on changing the street, I'm going to work on changing the street lights, and here's the 3 groups that need to work on that. You don't need another group of people watching them, just the town manager, maybe at Parks and Rec, maybe whoever. It's a small group of people to get that kind of stuff. There may be other times where, for instance, we're talking about something like, what do you do with Sagamore Forest? That's a bigger task. And that might be a time where the select board says, okay, we're going to put together a group of 3 people to kind of help coordinate this, because there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of information to find out. It's a much larger thing. And we expect this group to be done with their work in 6 months or a year or whatever. And it's not going to be a continuing committee that has to be staffed and has to report to somebody and everything else.
So it's the option, it gives the select board the option to do it, but they don't have to do it, because it's May.
But
I don't like it, and I don't like it because I think it points them in the direction of doing just that, of appointing that board. Jeremy's job is to do, if there were a Sagamore Farm issue, that's his job. And he can go to these various committees that he can select and say, can you work on this part, work on that part, work on that part, and come back and report to him, and then he talks to the select board. But to have yet another group in there anywhere, I think is really muddying the waters.
But we're not requiring it, but you're worried that
Requiring
it's
it,
being
but if you
hinted at?
suggest it, it will happen.
yeah, but the other thing too is I'm worried about this other group could slow down If somebody's got an idea and they're bringing it forward, if they don't like the person, if they don't like their idea, all of a sudden, the whole thing goes out the window because they're going to slow it down, because they're going to pick it apart. They're going to, they're going to have some really authority that they don't have. I think we do all the things you just said right now. We do special committees for specific items. They're usually sunsetted after whatever, not very long. We have several committees in this town, as we're all aware of. We got like 25, 26 committees that are involved with many different aspects of the community, So, I mean, there's plenty of coverage there. The town manager, she does her job, he or she does her job. They manage the community, the select board, you got the code office along with Jerry, his work. It's just that I think you're just adding a layer that does not need to be there.
I agree.
I think we already cover it.
I don't agree with that.
That's fine.
How many lists you want of important stuff in town that just doesn't get done? Okay? And if you go back in time, less than 10 years ago, we had one person in the planning and zoning and code office. Jeff was there by himself. He did everything. Okay? And then we had 1.5, and then we had 2, and now we're back to 2 again. We could be back to 1 because of budget issues or whatever else could happen. And I think that at that point, that becomes far too large of area of responsibility for one person to handle. It's just too much stuff to do.
Well, I agree with you, which is why this number 3 is there. On the other hand, well, I have 2 thoughts. One, maybe we put this in as an option and we discuss it with the select board, because I'm sure they're going to have some valuable input to give us on it. But the other thought is, number 2 says, town committees and boards shall incorporate implementation strategies and committee work plans as assigned to them in the comprehensive plan. Well, the select board is the group that creates and assigns committees, and that's in their powers in number 2, Article 2, in their duties and their responsibilities, is they have the authority to create committees. So is it safe to say this is almost redundant here, number 3? Would, knowing that the select board has the authority to create any committee it wants to do anything at any time,
Correct.
is that already covered by saying that they are responsible for the implementation of the plan's recommendations and strategies, and they have the power to appoint committees?
Yep, I think it's redundant, and I think
It's just
that
another
that
point of-
committees are required, that Jeremy and the town manager and, can get the select board to
And also,
do what's necessary.
over the years, these last 5, 6 years, I believe, that the committee's been asked to put together a work product, to say what they're going to do, so it isn't like it used to be a little more willy-nilly. It's more that they've got to assign tasks, or they have tasks that they do amongst themselves. So, I mean, I think we're fine. I really do. I don't think we need to add that layer.
I think in number 2,
I don't think Jeremy
we do
wanted
need
it
to
either.
add, though, town committees and boards shall incorporate implementation strategies and committee plans as assigned to them in the comprehensive plan and by the select board.
Where are you seeing that?
You're not seeing it, I'm reading it to you.
That's,
I made this all up at about 3:30 this afternoon.
okay.
So it would say, implementation program. Following the adoption of the comprehensive plan and any subsequent amendments, the select board shall direct the implementation of the plan's recommendations and strategies. That's who's responsible for implementation, is the select board. 1, subparagraph 1, the town manager shall be responsible for working with appropriate department heads to incorporate implementation strategies and department work plans, notifying other responsible parties as identified in the comprehensive plan, and coordinating implementation strategies. That's already in the one that you've got in front of you. And then 2 says, town committees and boards shall incorporate implementation strategies and committee work plans as assigned to them in the comprehensive plan and by the select board.
But isn't this, maybe I'm misunderstanding this, but isn't this what we're talking about earlier? You just said it's redundant to Article 2?
No,
I mean,
it's
the authority of the board already has that authority to put together committees, groups to, deal with special interests of the community.
No, what was redundant was creating they may create a whole nother implementation committee. Number 2 is saying to the select board, that they need to direct the town committees to include it in their work plans. Article 2 doesn't say the select board needs to include comprehensive things in the.
But that's part of the policy now, that the select board directs the committees.
Right, but this is trying to be specific that the comprehensive plan implementation is important and the select board should use town committees and boards to do that.
I agree.
Okay, so can we make that another one we're going to think about, and you see the wording written down so we can,
Yep, I will send this to you along, I will send out a revised
because I'd like to be able to see that and think
Article
about it
2,
for a second.
and
Okay.
obviously send it to Bill. So I'll send that out with all of this being redone for
Okay.
us to look at.
Thank you.
I think part of the difficulty is that the comprehensive plan is a long-term document. It's a 10-year document, okay? The select board is a political organization. They're elected for 3 years. They respond to the political ebb and flow in the community. That's what they're there to do. And I think it's going to be too easy to have some of these long-term things be forgotten about if you leave it all to the select board. And I would not leave it all to the director of planning, whoever it is, because part of this reason is to have citizen involvement, to make sure that we remain a town meeting form of government and we don't become a city council form of government.
The other thing is, I think you'd be overwhelming the development office if they have to do it all.
Yeah, but you're
So,
saying, just a few minutes ago, you really didn't want citizens petition and the participation in the comp plan because they weren't the interest wasn't there. Well, now you're going back.
No. I've already said is the planning board is citizens, it's not people from Mars.
No, I know that, but they're still part of the
I
government.
think they're different citizens than people walking up and down the street, John.
I'm not going to get a debate with you on this tonight, but,
we'll continue that when you see a revision.
right.
I can do the next thing very quickly. Article 4 Personnel Board update. I had a Zoom meeting with the Personnel Board about the changes we were proposing in that section. They had a subsequent meeting, and they have come up with some suggestions, and we will get that out to you as well for the next meeting. So that will happen. By the way, they have a preference to remain an elected board as opposed to an appointed board. That's the Personnel Board. Yeah, Personnel Board.
3 elected, 2 appointed,
Yeah, 1 town employee, 3 elected,
and 1 appointed, no.
I can't remember specific, I don't have it in
Wow.
front of me. So we have to determine our next meeting, and then we need to talk about a workshop with the select board. Would you all feel comfortable meeting in 2 weeks? Which is
On the same night, on a Wednesday?
Wednesday, because we can, according to Janice, our opportunities are the 2nd and 4th Wednesdays of the month.
Yeah.
What's the date on that?
That would be the 30th of September. And unless, John, you like to spend your 30th of October on Pearl Street.
This is
Treating.
30th of September.
Oh, not October, it's not. I'm wishing a whole month away.
Oh, and there's talks that Halloween will be prohibited because it would be too dangerous.
So,
It already is too dangerous.
so September 30th, and we'll be looking at,
Will not be here. It's okay.
we'll send you all of the information in advance, and you can send me your comments.
So let's talk about the select board dates.
Yes, and then the select board is very eager to have an initial work session with us. And they have suggested 2 dates that they would be available, October 13th at 5:30 or Monday, October 26th at 5:30.
What days?
October 13th is a Tuesday, Monday, October 26th.
I can't do a Tuesday at all, ever.
October 26th, we would certainly be well on our way with having finalized
Yeah.
some of these articles.
So is there going to be, and this is going to get me in a lot of trouble, is there an understanding that they're just there as not an advisory to just talk about their concerns versus, because this is.
To give us
a
their
whole-
feedback.
Right, because this is a whole separate group from the select board.
That is correct. That is, so the thought is that, when Bob
We're gonna
sent
turn
an
it
email
over.
today, I responded back that perhaps if you all would delegate that Lowry, myself, Bob Falciani and Audra and I would get together to figure out where we could do this and how we will do this. And Lowry and I will put together a format and review that with them.
You talking
Before.
13th or 26th?
I think we're doing the 26th. So what?
In person,
Well, yeah,
Yeah, it's got to be in person.
it's got to be, yes.
it may be part Zoom, part in person. There's some select board members that are still not meeting.
I think we should start it with in person, and those that want to Zoom, then they can.
So I think if you would delegate Lowry and Deb to work with Bob and Audra on how that can happen.
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
The
Another-
26th, I'm iffy.
Of October?
I'm going to be recovering.
The 26th, I'm gone too, so,
Wow.
All right, so maybe we need to suggest another date to them.
yeah.
And the 13th is out because it's a Tuesday.
What about the 14th?
We're in October now?
October 14th.
That would be our regular, would that be our regular
Yeah, October
second?
14th
I
works
can't
for
see,
me.
Yeah, it's the second Wednesday of October,
Or
right?
October 28th.
Okay, so I haven't lost you yet. I was going to go to my calendar. I'm not really good at multitasking on a
Those are
cell phone.
Wednesdays, right, Lauren?
Yeah, those are Wednesdays. 14th and 28th are
For
Wednesdays.
me.
So it would be, yeah, the 14th and 28th would be our regular meeting times.
Yeah, that
So I will go back to them and say, offer the 14th or
The
28th.
14th would work for me.
14th would be
14th works for you?
Yeah, the 28th, I'm
14th 's
gone, I'm
fine.
gone that whole week.
good.
We'll try the 14th.
Yeah, the 14th is the option first choice.
Which is our regular meeting.
First choice. What the heck was that? I don't know, I just made up
I
a
will
word.
let you know, I'll get back to everybody on that as soon as I hear back. And so our next meeting is in 2 weeks, September 30th. And unless you hear from me, it'll be here.
Before-
5:45?
Is 5:45 good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
Gives you a little extra
Time to
time.
have dinner
I
and,
will be 65 miles northwest of Fort Kent.
boy.
Well,
Fishing,
we will
okay?
send you all of the materials.
Blue something?
We thank Jean, too, for all the work she's done.
Thank you, Jean, seconded that motion. All those in favor of thanking Jean White?
Yes.
Now I'm gonna ask,
Hopefully she's heard all of this or not.
Thank you, Bill.
because this is becoming,
Good job keeping all the rascals in line. Thank you.
Thanks thank you so much, Bill. Bye-bye.
this is becoming list to list and pile after pile.
He muted us again.
Yellow folders. Can we, before or the night of sitting down with the select board, can we have this all in one document?
We will. Yes. So hopefully after the next meeting, we will have enough in draft shape to have one full document.
Great.
Okay, excellent.
I make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
But we'll have that before the select board meeting,
Now we
correct?
can turn off the
Oh, yeah,
recording.
yeah, yeah. Yes,
Yeah,
please.
and
Your
chance to review
microphones?
it, too. I agree.